Hello and welcome back to We Love the State. This is the state-sanctioned podcast. It is a pleasure to be here. I am your host, Andy Coons, and I am alone. Just for the intro, though. Ben's going to be here for the interview, and that's all right. It was a great interview. We had another returning guest. This is Hector Roos from the great state of Florida, where he's here to talk to us all about the aftermath of the Florida election. It was a great conversation, and just like the first time we had him on, we only got like 4 words in edgewise because we let Hector have the floor. The dude is extremely knowledgeable, he's extremely passionate, and we really enjoyed just letting him go off. So I hope you enjoy this just as much as we did. I know that we definitely want to have him on a 3rd, 4th, 5th, 100th time, you know. He's a great guest. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for showing up. I know we said that this is going to be uploaded on Friday, and unfortunately, we were not able to keep that schedule. Things are pretty crazy on my end of things. Lots of things with work that you guys don't care about. But anyway, either way, I definitely wanted to get this episode out on a semi-regular schedule. So we are going to be trying to go back to 2 episodes a week. The thing that's holding us up is personal schedules and work schedules and stuff like that. But that's all going to calm down soon and we'll get back to normal. Yeah, so let me do some quick plugs and we'll get right into this awesome interview. If you want to follow me on TikTok, you can follow me at Andy Coons. That is Koons. Just dropped a new video all about Nancy Pelosi stepping down, aka getting fired, which was a lot of fun. Gonna be putting some more content up there. If you want to follow me on Twitter, Twitter has been awesome recently with nobody giving a shit about what people say anymore. So you can follow me there at Andy_Coons. You can also follow my esteemed co-host on Twitter at Picture This 1979. And I think there's an underscore in there real quick. I'm going to look it up just so I can give everybody his correct Twitter. Okay, so it is Picture This 1979. No underscores, no spaces or anything like that. That's his hashtag. Go follow him. Go make him feel at home. Let's all build this We Love the State family on our social medias. If you want to follow Ben on Instagram, it's Picture This 1979. Find We Love the State on Facebook. We're followed by the National Libertarian Party. They shared one of our posts that went like super viral. And so that was awesome. I mean, viral for libertarian standards. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. We are still growing. We are still getting more downloads, more listens with every episode that we post. So and this is 26 episodes in. I can't imagine where we're going to be when we hit episode 100. And whenever we do get to episode 100 and whatever reach that we have, it's going to be due to you guys. It's going to be due to you guys sharing this and commenting and watching and liking it. And for that, I cannot express how deeply grateful I am. I wasn't expecting us to get the small amount of success that we've gotten this far in such a short amount of time. I was thinking it was going to take us years to get to this spot. And for that, I am eternally grateful. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this episode. I'm going to quit yapping. You guys don't want to hear me. You guys want to hear my bullshit anyway. So let's get right into this interview. This is Hector Roos on We Love the State. All right, everybody, we've got yet another badass guest. We've got my guy Hector Roos, all the way out from Florida. How you doing, Hector?
Good to be here, Andy. Thank you.
Good to have you back.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you knew this. Your first appearance is our best performing episode by like a huge margin.
So you are a popular guy. Huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. I guess it's I don't know if it's me or if it's what we talked about. I mean, we've got some serious stuff to iron out.
I don't know
in
if
this
you've got some
country.
like Illuminati connections or something, but that episode exploded. It's crazy.
Well, maybe it happened. We lined it up, right? I shot the preview video before that, inviting people to actually hear you, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
tune in
Good
and
point.
check it out. So I did reply a couple times on the TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, it wouldn't be the Illuminati, of course. It would be the Chinese, but
Right.
you know, it happens.
So you recently ran for office. You ran for governor, correct?
That's right.
All right, going up facing off against Ron DeSantis. One of the few naysayers that he has that aren't in the Democratic Party, but I think some very very valid criticisms for sure that he had against him. How did that go? What was the campaign like? What was the trail like? What kind of pushback were you getting from voters?
Well, I mean, it's interesting that you say that. The goal of the campaign was always to set a tone of, the Libertarian Party of Florida is here. We're running candidates, and we're not surrendering opportunities to challenge, the biggest names in politics just because because he has some ideas that people you know find acceptable, is to say a word, or better yet, because he owns the libs better than Donald Trump at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's really more accurate. So that's what we set out to do. The board supported my run, and and really our goal was to find out where our efficient where we're efficient and where our deficiencies are, and we did find out by election day where we're at. Some of it was we just haven't run a candidate like any candidate statewide in many years in Florida. So no, look, it's not a surprise that we pulled less than our voter registration for our candidates, both statewide candidates, by the way. So and then we had a U.S. Senate candidate as well. So the question really becomes, what do you do in that situation? Well, it's like any after any election, you see what worked and what didn't, where were your support or wasn't, and and how you have to redouble your efforts. Like those are the places your deficiencies or where you have to cover if you want to be a political party that actually means something and means something to people, right? Not just means something in terms of messaging or issues. In fact, I'll tell you, I got more pushback not because I was running against DeSantis, but because of what I was saying about DeSantis. So there's still conversation I have with people, really, really well-respected academics, like in libertarian and conservative circles, that are asking me, well, what do you mean about that medical mandates are still in place in Florida? I was at a conference in Miami, actually. The Students for Liberty came down, and a bunch of the editors from Cato came in, and I'm talking to these medical writers of theirs. I'm like, these mandates are still in place, right? I'm like, no, how's this not a story? I'm like, because you're not looking into it, you're not writing about it. But we basically had there was a special session in the legislature which they promised to basically remove all the laws that will even allow them to institute medical mandates, all sorts of medical mandates, from concentration camps to forced vaccinations to forced euthanasia, right? If you don't really get with a program, and at the end of the day, I'm like, so they brought in the special session, they had the vote, they reduced, uh, they took out parts of the law, but what do they leave in? They left in that the Surgeon General under a state of emergency can basically decide whatever he wants. Like he can set the concentration camp still, he can set the forced vaccinations, he can set all this in place. So when you have the legislature do that, and this isn't the only time that legislature in Florida did that under Ron DeSantis. Uh, what happens is now you have the legislature basically approve and adopt this as current, right? So we had the chance to change it, and we didn't because we wanted it in place. In other words, so that's actually a kind of scary thought, because Florida being like the third or fourth most populated state in the country, that can have this actually happen, and DeSantis's explanation was, well, it's not going to happen while I'm governor. Okay.
That just makes it scarier, because it's like, who knows what the next person is willing to do. You don't want to hand them that kind of power.
Yeah,
exactly. It's dystopian at the end of the day, and that and that's obviously it's problematic. I find it I found it scary enough just watching how it played out. The other, and I'll give you the bill number actually if I get a minute. But the other bill was the one. There's another bill that had even more, or law that passed that he signed a law which had a lot more prominence. It's because it was a wedge. It was a culture issue. And it was the Parental Rights and Education Act, the Don't Say Gay bill, right? So again, it did the same. It did exactly the opposite of what it was proposed to do. It literally limited parents' recourses in school boards. So in order to actually that now the legislature basically it essentially it says that any parents with parents with kids at grade 3 or below have are banned from receiving education by any sex education, right? So if the parent actually, because it's a ban, because it's a mandate, it's a state mandate, the parents can't say anything, really. You'd have to actually go to. So in other words, they can't say anything. There's no redress because an administrator is going to turn around and say, "Well, the legislature said this, right? So you now have to follow the law, and I have to follow the law." So guess what? The first law now you actually require parents in order to force the law to actually go to court instead of just working it out. That so and now anybody, by the way, and here's the scary part of the law. What happens to everybody who's in grade 4 and up? Now it's actually legal.
Yeah.
They actually legalized it by the universe because they had the opportunity to ban it, and they created a policy statewide that said you cannot do this grades 3 and down and lower. But hey, if it's grade 4 and up, it's fair game. You still don't have to ask permission from the parents.
It's a weak position.
You don't. So on that end, they completely stripped away parental rights. Now the parents still have officially now have zero discretion in terms of who they can talk to or redress. In other words, in the school system itself, other than taking the kid out of the school.
Yeah.
So again, opposite of what was the champion of parental rights and the way it was named, right? Reminds me of the Patriot Act. Is it really patriotic to spy on everybody and consider them terrorists before? In other words, they're guilty before, and yet they're guilty and they have to prove themselves innocent. That's really where it's more of those kind of laws, and that's really the recourse. Again, I'm saying all these things, and my pushback again is that, oh no, he's not so bad. He sounds like a great guy on all these things, except maybe his foreign policy. He's a Zionist or a neocon or whatever, right? But ultimately, like that's what they throw away and say, well, on domestic issues, he's okay. And then I look at, well, these are domestic issues that we're all talking about because they're relevant to our time. But no, not those domestic issues. Some other domestic issues. So that's where actually it ends up coming down, like why we needed to really set the tone of what he's all about. What he's really all about, which is whatever's easiest to create a publicity, whether the legislation is good or bad doesn't matter, as long as he can push it out as this is good in the culture war, and he can get a lot of buzz. You can either own the libs, and if you don't like it, you're just part of the libs, right? So in other words, the premise at the beginning of this podcast was, there are a lot of people like that were Democrats that didn't like what he was doing, and I'm pretty sure I'm not a Democrat, and I'm also pretty sure that I'm not alone. I mean, there were a lot of people. You have to remember this wasn't like a voter turnout, record that we had in this past election. It was not by any means. In fact, we all know that there just really hasn't been people just stayed home. In other words, they really didn't care as much because honestly, has politics been good for them in the last couple of years? No. Have they been provided a choice that they feel that they can work with? Neither. And frankly, it's also negative that they rather just not participate at all. So that's really where we're at now. I can say where I'm going to go from here. Obviously, I'm expecting Ron DeSantis to go run for president in 2 years, and that means he basically has about a year to declare.
Yeah.
So this is his window. He has a year to be governor, and then after that, he's candidate for president. And that's okay. I mean, that's what he's going to do. He's trying to already get around the law that says that it requires him to resign to run, which would set off a special election again in 2 years. So there would be another governor election in 2024. I mean, I would contemplate jumping in there if the cards were where my, if I had the cards, basically. So well, that's really where we're at. So I've been talking to the team. Where do we go from here? Because we, obviously the deficiencies were, we have a lot of conversations to have with our own libertarians. We have a lot of them in the party itself and those outside the party to have a conversation with, because they know that in this election cycle, this is how I named it. This is how I declared it on election night. I basically pointed out that DeSantis was the protest vote for a lot of people, including Democrats, by the way. So there's no way you can get a 10-point win without Democrats voting for you,
especially in Miami.
Well, yeah, exactly, right, exactly the point. In Miami, in Orlando, there were counties that hadn't voted, voted as a Republican, majority for years, decade at least, right? So in some cases, Miami-Dade my county hadn't voted for a Republican like that in 20 years, or almost 20 years. The Osceola County, which is just north of Orlando, didn't has parts of Disneyland in it, didn't vote in like that for almost 10 years. So that's really where you're looking at, and it's a unique situation where they put up the most uncharismatic Democrat running. This is a guy, he was Charlie Crist, who was basically, I would sit there talking to Democrats and say, I can't vote for him. He's just another Republican.
Well, I almost heard that they said he was basically like an empty suit. He just had talking points and he stuck to them, and pretty boring.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed by the middle of the campaign, they were basically copying off my cheat sheet. They're using my campaign as a cheat sheet. They started talking about economics. Democrats talking about taxes and cost of living. I mean, it's usually not that way. So they noticed they had an issue and they hadn't pivoted properly to it. But with that said, so imagine if I was in that situation. I was the Democrat candidate for governor, and in a state that's turning into a higher cost of living state, strictly because of government regulations and the failure of the state government to actually reduce the regulatory burden to open up the market, make things cheaper. So and at the same time, I'm a sitting U.S. congressman, and the three issues that he was trying to campaign on to create wedge issues was abortion, cannabis, and something else that escapes the hell out of me, because that's really how like where do you stand? I kept on hearing abortion, but the guy wouldn't even address immigration, and he was in Congress already. So if he wanted to talk, at this point, even when Biden had announced that he was going to pardon people, that really wasn't a pardon for simple possession in the federal court system. By the way, none of them have. Very few of them have actually been pardoned, but none of them have been released. So there are some people who were guilty of simple possession. They're already out of the prison system. They got their pardons easy, but the people who are still in jail have not been released for it. So, by the way, I just want to put that as an aside. So this guy, even when Joe Biden is saying that we're going to reschedule cannabis, we're going to release people for simple possession, he's still a member of sitting Congress. We had 70% of the adult voting population in Florida vote for medical cannabis, and he still sits there and does nothing. Like that's how, like, hello, like, be relevant for a change on something.
Yeah, check your pulse.
Immigration. We have 6 million voting age adults that are self-identified Hispanic by the U.S. Census in the state of Florida. That's an enormous number. That's a third of the population of the third of the voting age population of Florida, and nothing on immigration, right? At the same time that DeSantis was paying a legit retired spy to go to Texas and trick people to get on planes that are asylum seekers and go transport them and drop them off in liberal havens like Massachusetts. Martha's Vineyard. That's one. I ended up suing DeSantis on that because he had no legitimate authority under law to spend any money to have any program like that outside of the state of Florida. Where he got the money to even hire the spy, this lady named Perla, I forget her last name, Perla Huerta, a 28-year veteran of Army intelligence, and basically the spy master. This ain't. I mean, they basically hired a bunch of military contractors to run behind the scenes to make sure these programs operated function properly. And then on the front end, they paid the expensive flights and the flight contractors or transportation contractors with these asylum seekers out of state funds, of course, in Texas. So the law literally states that those monies were supposed to be used to transport what are deemed illegal immigrants to basically take them out of Florida and move them somewhere else. And his excuse is, we can't find any in Florida, where I just said there's 6 million. By the way, U.S. Census doesn't care if they're citizens or not. They're there, and they're so definitely concentrated in Miami. I mean, you can't find any. You can't even pay them to get on a plane and just go somewhere. It just sounds a little ludicrous. So,
and the stuff you don't hear, you don't hear that. I mean, obviously Fox not gonna give you that kind of a behind the scenes peek into where did these people come from, how did they get there, who spent what money, which was allocated. Yeah, that's a great point. I don't think even CNN bothered to get that deep on the news.
So the guy in Florida, he's a Democrat now, but before he switched because of the pandemic, he actually switched from Republican to Democrat. Forget his name now, but he's an attorney who's been doing all these lawsuits from the abortion lawsuit. By the way, so which I'll say that real quick. He's been the abortion. So Florida has implemented, the legislature passed a 15-week abortion ban. No exemptions for rape, incest, the life of the mother, nothing, none of that. So it was very restrictive. So Florida has a larger Jewish population, and in their religion, they're very concerned about the genetic health of the child. So they actually continue to observe the health of the child past 15 weeks. And that's part of their religious practice, their social practice. So that guy actually sued under that. And the court said, yes, this is actually a reasonable reasonable imposition on people's religious beliefs. And so, that they basically, the court stopped the implementation of that abortion ban. Now, of course, I'm pro-life. I believe in reasonable restrictions. But I also don't believe that we should be treating any of these social problems as a crime that would require a police state to manage.
Right.
So, but with that said, again, you look at all these fights that are happening on the side, and Charlie Crist, the Democrat, is nowhere to be seen. It ends up being you think that you would think that Charlie Crist was put up there to make it easier on Ron DeSantis to win like this, right? Win huge, right? Because it was like you're running against a cardboard cutout. Like, okay, I mean, he showed some flash, a couple signs here. Are you, the only debate that DeSantis allowed himself to participate in was run by that conservative TV network. Can't remember its name now, but the one that was caught sending out this memo to all of its TV stations, and they all repeated the same lines about misinformation. I don't know if you seen that YouTube clip.
Yeah, the mashup. I think.
Yeah,
it's not a mashup. It's supercut.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So where you see all the reporters basically repeating the same words over and over like drones.
Yeah.
So that one of the local affiliates owned by that network organized the only debate that they had they officially had on broadcast TV. I had one on Spanish. I had two in Spanish actually, and there'll be more in that. But the only thing that mattered, that got through about any of the questions that this Democrat challenged DeSantis on was, are you not going to run for president? And I'm like, okay, I mean, that's legit for a lot of people but how does that sell you? Like, right, that sells you against maybe Trump, but the DeSantis totally flinched on the question, but we all know he's going to run anyway.
I didn't follow the Florida election that closely. Were you able to get on the debate stage?
No, not with not with the Democrat or Republican. So there was 4 candidates for governor. There was 2 of us who were Hispanic, myself and another a lady who's running with no party affiliation.
Mhm.
So we set up we talked to basically radio stations to host and carry a live stream broadcast of 2 debates, and we ended up getting the first debate ended up having somewhere north of 800,000 listeners
Jesus.
on radio because they ended up broadcasting internationally. So they
Wow.
did, and then the second one they had somewhere close to 2 million. So
Damn.
I'm there talking to a Spanish audience about libertarian principles. I'm like, you guys, this is like, I mean, this was interesting because I'm like,
That's amazing. That
That
just
is
that
a-
opportunity to have that kind of a outreach and to be a spokesman for liberty.
Yeah, not only that. So before we brought you on, Hector, we just finished another episode where we kind of dissected Dave Chappelle's monologue on SNL that he just did. But one thing that I said was that the Libertarian Party has a huge opportunity, not only with like black ghettos in America, but with Hispanic communities as well. And you were the one that brought up Hispanic communities, but it's like these are areas that have been hurt the worst with
by
government.
government.
Yeah, and like they're the ones that really need to hear the message.
Well, to see that they're, especially if they left because of horrible government, whether it's in Cuba or Mexico, like they are the ones who are jaded. Like they should be the most receptive to our message
Right.
of limited government, if not, extremely, or getting the government as close to you as possible, as opposed to, a centralized government. So that alone, I think, is amazing to have that kind of outreach for the Libertarian Party.
Have you gotten feedback from, I mean, whether it's community organizers or what's the feedback that you're getting from Hispanic communities?
So they obviously they have a lot of interest in this dialogue. So I've been invited to continue doing like more like discussions like as on different radio networks out there, which is flattering. But I never that was never my intention to start going into that direction and preaching the gospel of libertarianism.
Hell yeah.
In Spanish, in Espanol. But at the end of the day, I'm like, but I still want to organize in Florida. I still want to, this is where I'm at. But I do realize there's a lot of there's utility there because you're reaching a bigger audience. You can, that's a lot of people to sell T-shirts to. I mean, yeah,
bumper stickers.
I'm saying sell T-shirts because you can't accept political contributions abroad.
Speaking of, go to WLTS we have merch.
Shameless plug.
Yeah, had to put one in there.
We are the state. There you go. We are the state.com. We are the state.com. We are the state.com and accept no invitations.
Except that was totally wrong. It's we love the state.com.
We love the state. Exactly.
Come on, Hector.
We're not that big where we can claim to be the state.
Yeah, you can, right? Like exactly. So you're right. We love the state. Yeah. So at the end of the day, I'm looking at the next year too, as well as just like where can we bring up the support, right? Where's the network? I'm not going to waste the voters that I've identified that are basically the hardest core libertarians out there, without cussing, and that really would reject DeSantis and the notion that he's a protest candidate in any form that would resemble libertarian or small government. I mean, this guy is not even a small government conservative. So if that
and the establishment is backing up, like he's not
sure.
He's not a man of the people, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's been clear for some time. Obviously, I've had some inside dealings in regards to to who's aligned to who in Florida. Because I remember, I mean, I don't know if I got to tell you this in the first podcast, but I was helping DeSantis in his first campaign, so I was intimately involved. I'd seen things. Been to the big like private fundraisers where I saw who was lining up behind him. I saw those things. So it was that it's not like this is a surprise. And that's really what it comes down to.
Hmm.
What we're seeing now is just a very slow, methodical train wreck. In fact, even before this, I remember during the lockdown, the people in California were telling me that they were expecting. I mean, they were expecting, literally expecting, that it's going to be the media and call it elites if you like, are trying to stage a showdown between Ron DeSantis and Gavin Newsom for 2024.
Hmm.
And so you have people who both locked down their states and kept it essentially in about the same state of emergency for about the same length of time, by the way, because the emergencies in Florida didn't really lift formal emergencies, suspension of civil rights, all those things, um, in a written form until as an emergency order until basically 2 weeks before California lifted, completely reopened with no other restrictions. Of course, like I said before, they did codify certain restrictions in regards to medical mandates. So, schools, for instance, schools in Florida didn't actually get rid of their mask mandates until March of this year. And the public hospital systems, there are 8 of them in every metropolitan area in Florida, have this. Uh, they still have the same medical mandates like if it was 2020. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. So even so that it's something that people still don't believe in. But like, what do you mean? You clearly you don't live in Florida, and you don't and you have private healthcare, so you don't have to respond. You don't have to go in through an emergency room or have to rely on the public health system that it does exist in Florida.
Do you think that you were able to move DeSantis on any of his? Because that's one of I think a great utility of running a libertarian candidates is to be able to push the Republicans, especially the ones that are good on some things.
Honestly, I think the lawsuit had more impact on the decision of the administration to move on their programs towards immigration, and they definitely dampened down on their rhetoric, because the rhetoric before was same as Trump, right? Immigrants bring disease, they bring crime, they do nothing, but they do nothing for the economy, like they do nothing for us, except they all hire labor, like hire these guys anyway. So it was interesting. We got hit by a major hurricane in the middle of like last couple of weeks of the election, and it was a good pivot point to understand that Florida is actually one of the most hostile states in terms of the regulation and law to anyone that comes in from out of state, to any outside labor or contractors coming in from outside the state. Just incredibly uh, restrictive. So in other words, a big roofing contractor brought his entire team from Texas to move to Florida to help out with roofing in Florida, and they arrested the guy. You know,
Oh, wow.
they arrested the guy who was obviously there was, but this has been a known problem since at least 2004.
Is that
It's
because of licensure? Like they are
Yes,
only
absolutely.
licensed
It's
in the state?
number one licensure, but they're more aggressive in regards to these contractors because they don't want competition. But the problem is that if you don't have enough qualified contractors, the work obviously gets slowed down,
And it
and the
gets a
ones
lot
that
more expensive.
it gets a lot more expensive. But worse and foremost, Florida is already considered the fraud capital of the country. So what happens is that you now have fewer good contractors working in the state, and that means it promotes fraud automatically, because then you're signing off on paperwork. The way the way contractors were allowed to work in Florida is that you can go get an estimate. You can sign an estimate. Now you're contracted to this guy for this work, and he's promised to do it for you in the next 30 days to 6 months, that entire window. And if he doesn't do it, you have no recourse. Actually, he can, if you end up going to another contractor under that claim, he can sue you for the missed work, for the work that you didn't let him do because you let someone else do it for you. That means you're going to end up paying twice. So that's the Florida scam that's been going on forever, and we actually recently, for the longest time, had something called assignment of benefit fraud abuse, assignment of benefit abuse, AOB abuse, which basically means that if you can, the contractor can do all the work, and charge the insurance company whatever it wants, and the insurance company goes, "Well, what the hell is this? I never approved this. So, well, we have the law. We can assign our benefits to ourselves immediately, and then you want to fight it, talk to our attorney. And ends up being that the attorneys have to, the insurance companies are obligated to settle on some amount of money, a lot higher than they would have if it was in a competitive environment. So of course, jacks up the rates even further. I mean, I can go on and on this subject, but the point is that these guys, since this has been a well identified problem for 18 years, since we had a series of hurricanes come through in the first decade of the first decade of this millennia, and the legislature just kicked the can down the road, refused to really resolve these issues, whether it's occupational licensing, issues with insurance, assignment of benefit abuse. And it's frustrating to hell for people, but it's become a system in Florida where the costs are continually shuffled to a small sector of society, and because they're the ones taking more of the burden and they're a smaller group, nobody else cares, and the politicians are happy because their revenues remain unchanged or grow, right? So under DeSantis, we had an increase in taxes, whether it was sales tax. We implemented internet sales tax for the first time in Florida under DeSantis. I mean, huge, billions of dollars. And at the same time, that this revenue was in growing from the people, from the general public, you had special interests and private companies getting tax write-offs. So it's like it's just a lot more of transferal of who's paying the taxes in the society, and at the same time, you have all these tax increases, and the biggest problem that people were facing, obviously cost of living issues in Florida, was sitting on the biggest surplus of revenue in its history. Like it couldn't spend, it couldn't find ways to spend money. That's how, like, imagine if you got a blank check and said, go spend all this money, as much as you can in 1 year, right? And literally you would have to hire other people to figure out a way to spend as much of it as you can. And they had so much of it in Florida, they still, even though they had this huge bureaucracy, they still couldn't figure out how to spend $26 billion. I mean, it was just there. I mean, it's there. So, and of course, revenues is not going to be really impacted by the much because of the recession. We have three major industries in Florida: farming, real estate, and tourism. And really, if everywhere else is shitty, it's part of my language, then everyone's still going to want to come to Disney World or tourism or Michigan in 30-degree weather, right? It's going to want to come to Florida. No offense.
No, our weather sucks. It's all right.
So what's next for you?
So yeah, ultimately we're reconfiguring. Where does the direction of the party go? What needs to be done that the party really just can't do, and obviously there's a lot of PACs or other services that we need to set up outside of the party. We need our own news platform. We need people with blogs to actually coordinate, to try and disseminate information among ourselves. We need to improve our internal culture, and you just can't do that within the party itself. Yeah. So with that said, and of course elections, right? We got a couple of people elected this year just because nobody would challenge them into the election. Kind of weird Florida laws we have. So so I was saying before, was like, what comes next? I mean, really, and it's like it's really like any of the other states that had elections. Where can you improve? Like and frankly, where's the easiest places you can improve, right? So, we have, some of the places that I got the most votes, we didn't have county affiliates in those areas. So I'm like, well, we're going to have to camp out there for a couple months, guys, and just figure that out.
Have you seen like any influx of like new members or people like looking to sign up or have questions? I mean, because you're out. I mean, you touched a lot of people. Just
all year we've
2.8 million.
We've been signing people up, into our new membership of the state party. But with that said, we have a closed primary system in the state of Florida. So one of the things I want to do is actually start building up in who are actual members without actually having to count on our voter roll, because we have three things working against us. We have closed primary system, meaning that you have to be a registered voter of that party to participate in that primary. We have public voter rolls. So if you want to change your party, you have to self-identify, like you're outed, right? And then the third thing is we also have a sore loser law that has basically discouraged people. Say, if I want to have political expression, if I want to run for office, I have to actually be a member of that state party for at least a year before I can qualify to run for that office. Yeah, it can get a little complicated, because when you get frustrated is when you want to go do something about it, and the legislature try to discourage that. This year, actually, we had a couple legal wins where that law has actually been found to be unenforceable. So I'm trying. We're trying to get people to come back and show some force. At this point, it's a matter of time. We were able to knock off like a third of our qualifying fees for everybody. We qualify by either petition or by fees, qualifying fee, and we were able to knock off a third of the qualifying fee for everybody in the entire state that want to run as a partisan candidate. So making it easier by virtue just less expensive has been a success. But we have to build on the victories, and like I said, the wins that we're taking, we have to make it grow for. We just have to make it grow for ourselves. Yeah. So I firmly look forward to like building up a list of vendors and developing vendor relationships throughout the state for candidates to rely on. It's one of the big things that people ask, like, who can I go and do this for? Who can I get this work from? And realistically, there are people to avoid, and there are good people that commercial vendors that do with everybody that people should just turn to if they really need that kind of support. Because and ultimately, like this weekend, I'm doing a political activism training, with Anthony Welty. Spike Cohen's going to drop by. We're really just trying to create a culture of what really activism is, and really, it's a marketing for us. We have to decide how do you pick your battles, right? How do you pick your battles? So there is actually a technique that exists to narrow down and create scores, like a scoring system for what do you get out from actually any particular action that you're going to take in terms of activism. If I run for office, if I commit to a program where I'm going to try and pass some kind of legislation, and it's basically ultimately we have to improve the operational intelligence of activists in the movement. And there are tools that everyone just needs to become familiar with, not just like a communications box, like what I want them to know, what I want people to know about me, what I want them to know about my opponent, what I'm going to say about my opponent, what my opponent's going to say about me, and vice, so on and so forth. Like there are these tools that people it's a lot of this is just mechanics at the end of the day. So what we intend to do, like in terms of bringing change, is meeting people where they are, trying to act, focusing on the bread and butter issues that people really matter about, that conservatives really just have been too busy focusing on honestly bullshit issues that affect such a few amount of people, that let that be somebody else's fight. What hill are you going to die on?
Right.
That's really the question, right? Are you going to die on, are you going to die on 90% income tax, or are you going to be worried about unisex bathrooms now being labeled something different, right?
Well, let me ask you this: if you had to choose one hill to die on, what would it be?
Specifically for the state of Florida.
Well, broadly for the state of Florida, I'd end property taxes immediately.
Hell yeah. Yeah.
And that'd be the number one. The number two would just be secession.
Hell yeah. That was actually that was my next question. Like, where do you stand on that? Because there's been talk, with Florida and Texas, because they would be kind of the ideal state to succeed, because they've got, water access. Yeah. They're comfortable. They're only bordering, well, at least for Florida, you're only bordering a few states. So
it's a really exciting issue. But I'm going to say it like this: a state must be sovereign first amongst itself. The people must be sovereign too. So property taxes have to be closed, because it's a ridiculous. It's a form of taxation that's just as bad as an income tax, where it strips the sovereignty of the individual. You never own your own home. You never own your own land. You basically never own anything. I mean, it's communist. Now, on the second of that is now the relationship between the state and the federal government. what really prevents us from being having these independent states? It's really just the U.S. dollar. It's really just dollar economy that we participate in, the banking system that we participate in as a result. So guess what? Just get the hell out of it. Adopt Bitcoin as a standard, and move on. Let people get on big numbers into Bitcoin. You can do it simply by making it legal in the state for state agencies to transact in Bitcoin, accept a Bitcoin for payments, build up the capacity in Florida, start create, and privately. That's one of the other goals I want to have. The other areas are having this, and I'm sure other areas where you're at are doing this too. They're forming the whole supply chain of Bitcoin, right? They're going to the farmers, they're going to producers, and they're going all the way to retailers and consumers, training them on how to get into a Bitcoin standard.
Have you ever heard of gold backs?
No.
So these are fascinating. They are a bill, and I need to get some of mine and leave them out here so I can show people, but it's a gold
just like
back.
Like a greenback, but it's a gold back.
Yeah.
Okay.
So those are a bill, a durable bill with gold like built into them. It's like this laminated plastic bill, but it's extremely durable, and they use lasers to shoot gold atoms onto the backs of the plastic laminates, and they have like a single gold back all the way up to like I think
a 50 note.
A 50 note,
yeah.
And like a one gold back is 1/1000th of a troy ounce of gold, and it's actual physical gold on the bill. And I mean that's an interchangeable currency right there, and the value is built into it. So it's not backed by anything. It is. Plus,
its gold and silver are already legal tender, so it's just a matter of getting rid of the taxes for transaction fees. But we had Ben, can't remember his last name. Schaefer. Yeah, Ben Schaefer from the company on episode a couple weeks ago. So yeah, it was very interesting and informative. I'm a big proponent of gold and silver simply because there's it's physical, it's not digital, doesn't require electricity, it's easily weighed. And there are talks about trying to tie in the gold back into blockchain, so to make it more transactable over long distances. So, but it's fascinating, and it's already been adopted in 4 states. Mm-hmm. So
we're trying to get it here in Michigan.
But that was speaking of currency, I think that from my perspective, that was always going to be the catalyst that would really push states to reevaluate whether they want to succeed or not. Because if you are, your citizens are rioting in the streets, and you're just the currency's in the gutter, like that's foundational to society. Like if the money, the what I work for is constantly being devalued, that really strips the power from the state.
Yeah.
But we love the state.
You're right. You're right. We do love the state.
So yeah, I think honestly, we should just legalize everything. In terms of all these opportunities that we're facing, like gold, whether it's gold or silver or whatnot. We just need to have these. We need to have options that are not a U.S. dollar that is built on a fraud.
Right.
We can't have fraud-backed currency. And I'm not even saying it's legal tender. It's just fraud.
It's just counterfeiting.
Counterfeit. It's counterfeit. Okay. So we need, if we can have at least competing currencies. In other words, if we can just withdraw from legal tender laws generally, the thought process, right? The idea that legal tender, because legal tender, like currencies were already a creation of the market. Now, then somebody said, let me freeze or monopolize only the types of currencies that I like, that I want, and give an advantage to all those over others. So it's just monopolistic at the end of the day. So what we want is to get government out of money. We want to get government out of money. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
and empower people to do so. So I'll put it to a different way. So the blockchain, the revolutionary applications or better yet said, we overuse the word revolutionary too often. So I will use the word disruptive. The disruptive impact on commerce of blockchain means that you can go to an unsecured market, say, whether it's Africa or South America, that doesn't have a strong traditional banking system or finance, finance that can ensure or create long-term contracts for goods and services over time. So in other words, like you hear of you hear the spot price of gold, the spot price of oil, of different commodities out there. Well, what about the spot price of bananas, right? You never hear that. Why? Because you can't commoditize them, because they're based in economies, based in countries that don't have a strong financial sector, right? Or dependable financial sector for that matter. And their currencies are even more manipulated than the US dollar is. So with that said, so the blockchain instead becomes another form of like the digital ledger that it is, that allows that ledger to actually be securitized, and all the assets that are assigned to it can be securitized for the first time in history. So now all of a sudden, we're there. Now all of a sudden, we're so much closer to. I mean, what was that expression? The solution for world hunger, because now we can allocate resource. The market can be even more efficient in allocating resources in any situation. So I'm very hopeful for the future, because the market is just getting that much more creative and much more efficient, and there are people with the know-how that are positioning themselves to capitalize on this, on the lack of competition and the lack of access that whole countries don't have to the Western banking economy, or the Western economy generally, for import, export, or long-term contracts. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this concept, because I can go on a little bit more. Like, it talks about, so in other words, a company. So the biggest sugar providers in the world are what? Brazil, Colombia. They're some of the Caribbean countries. I mean, these are countries that are well developed markets. But if you're in a country that does not have a good banking system, and you can't listen, transportation and trade are sometimes so difficult, because you're still working from ships that are dealing with, like, their manifests, a simple manifest. They've been doing the same thing for 200 years, and there's no way to know if your material is actually on that packing ship. Like, this. We're coming here. This is where I want to go with this. Have you guys ever used Amazon?
Yeah,
I've heard of it.
A little bit, right? So if you're or ordered anything online through a store, an e-store, so they use something called a 0-day supply chain. So in other words, you order it and it gets to you as soon as possible to you. Used to be that you would have to wait weeks. Now you're waiting a day, sometimes the same day, or 0 day, as they say. Instead, it used to be weeks. Or now, how does that happen? It's because now they've created an entire warehousing system that basically they're trying to use. Maybe they actually may have already moved to their own private ledger on a blockchain, in other words, to organize this. But they're certainly doing it internally, a similar function, where they can keep track of their inventory in that manner. So they can deliver it where the demand is as quickly as possible. Now imagine expanding that idea to other countries that have had just shitty inventory management systems for a century, that all of a sudden they can turn around and be like Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what would that do for the price of consumer goods if they had all of a sudden had had all this extra goods on the market available for purchase?
Just for the efficiency that they gained.
No, price goes down. There's just more supply now accessible to the market, and of course that's transformative, because we measure civilization gains based on how productive our economy is, how productive individuals are, and so ultimately, when the costs go lower, that means that we can get not only does our money basically I mean, assuming that it's not corrupted and counterfeit, if our purchase power as individuals goes up, if we don't have to work as many hours to subsist and to purchase the things that we need, we have that much extra free time, then we can become even more innovative. We can lead to more productivity gains. We can choose to simply work more if we wanted to, and be that much more productive on the alternative too. But that is a decision of the wealthy. That is actually what leads to wealth creation. That's lets you save, it lets you put it aside, because now you're not having to spend as much money. So this is when they say why is Bitcoin so revolutionary or disruptive? Or in this case, now this is a good time to say revolutionary, because now we have the ability to transact in a manner that is simply so efficient, and it delivers goods so much easier to the market, and eliminates so many middlemen, by the way, that we can reduce prices dramatically. Anyway, so guess what happens when you do that? You take this concept and you move it to a state like Florida, Texas, or Michigan, and all of a sudden you have a situation where you're transacting on a blockchain, and you don't care about the national borders. Heck, you don't care about your state border. You just cared about who can deliver my goods to me the best, and in terms of time efficiency, in terms of cost. And all of a sudden, there's this separation among peoples is doesn't matter as much anymore. The issues of suspicion among the strangers lowers, because everyone recognizes that they're bringing value, and it becomes, since you're not as reliant on the national border and national security state to deliver your goods, then it's easier simply to say, okay, well, then I don't need this political relationship anymore either. And now your political relationship, again, this is the key. The political relationship ties into consumer behavior always. So if people, the reason why people are so frustrated with politics is because politics takes so long to make any particular decision. When now we're looking at 0-day supply chains, and the consumers are used to, hey, I want it on demand. I want it my way, not your way, right?
What do you think about like governments kind of hijacking the not crypto in general, but blockchain technology to create CBDCs? Because I can kind of see like it's a great idea, it's a great, but I can totally see it being used for nefarious purposes because it's programmable.
So obviously there's a lot of bad digital currencies out there, whether they're state-based or not, like the one that was developed out of El Salvador, right? The one that went crypto legal first, right? Or replaced their entire national currency with a cryptocurrency or some kind of digital currency. It went bankrupt. They're just bad. They're not open to the market, so they're going to collapse under its own weight. Now, the future of cryptocurrencies is going to be these decentralized exchanges. So right now, we still have through cryptocurrencies, we still have centralized exchanges. So we just heard with FTX this week, they declared bankruptcy, and a lot of people lost money because they can't recover it, whether it was fraud or theft or both. They're done, right? So and they threw up their hands in the air and they said, we're not gonna. We're just your SOL, right? So the key is that you have these they're just acting like depository, these centralized exchanges, whether it's crypto.com or FTX or a lot, they're simply acting as a depository. They're mimicking the banking system as it exists, and the banking system with all the rules and regulations of know your client, if open to seizure from a government, or theft from a either a hacker or an inside job, right? Which has been really more apparent that there's more inside jobs in this than meets the eye. So right from the beginning too. So decentralized currency will be or decentralized protocol for trade will be the future. So in other words, that you can exchange person to person without a third party to validate, to be a third party that's not the blockchain, because blockchain is supposed to self-validate the transaction itself. So that's what it comes down to when in what we're talking about for what's going to happen in the future. So that's all privacy concerns will be resolved at that point. You can get creative with some of these other currencies that are designed for privacy, or some other protocols that you have to do now to basically protect your identity in these transactions. But the ultimate solution is a decentralized protocol. So you show it could be as simple as you show a paper to somebody and they scan it, and you validate the transaction for a certain amount, and you're done.
Well, let's go ahead and start to wrap things up. I want to ask you a 2-part question, Hector.
Sure.
Number one, what are your final thoughts for our regular everyday listeners, your average Joe libertarian? And then, if you would, in Spanish, give your final thoughts directed at the Hispanic community. What's the one thing you want to say to them?
Okay, got it.
All right.
So for the listeners of, we love the state. You can say we are the state, because if you are a sovereign person, then you are the state, and you love the state for good reason.
I just kind of feel I need to put my hand over my heart for that. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, the only time you lose is when you give up. So just always remember that your liberty is up to you. A politician giving you your liberty means that you never had your liberty to begin with. So you're born with it. You're stuck with it, and you use it responsibly or don't. But be prepared to pay the consequences for it.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, be nice, because libertarians believe in the application of the golden rule for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's politics or whether it's individuals. It's just it's a natural law. Do unto others as you would have other people do to you. And you're in Michigan, so go Wolverines, right?
Or Spartans.
Yeah. Okay. So there you go. So and in Spanish, para mis amigos oyentes que están participando y escuchando, que pueden entender mi idioma, les presento que nosotros amamos el Estado. Pero y entendemos que amamos el Estado porque nosotros somos el Estado. Nosotros somos los beneficiarios, nosotros somos la gente que dispone la autoridad a los políticos y a este sistema político. Y a través de hoy en día nosotros tenemos la responsabilidad de tomar entre nosotros mismos el poder de que hemos dedicado a los políticos, porque los políticos han perdido la vista de lo que vale el ser humano y las necesidades de la comunidad humana en todo el mundo. Entonces, por eso digo, hermanos y hermanas, somos familia humana, y hay que respetar y hay que lidiar con el oro dorado y en sí buscar el paz y la prosperidad juntos, y en vez de divididos como los políticos quiere decir que somos diferentes, y no lo somos. Somos unidos con las mismas necesidades y la gran capacidad que hemos recibido desde nuestro propio naturaleza. Con mucho gusto. Buenas noches. Good night to my family here in the We Love the State.
Beautiful. Well,
Muchas gracias.
Yeah. I didn't understand any of that, but it sounded very passionate, and I'm very glad that you had the opportunity to say it. So, Hector, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for all the great work you're doing. I mean, that's you've definitely touched and reached out to a lot of people and educated them on the fact that there is another option out there. You don't have to be stuck in the duopoly. So, thank you for your service to the state.
All right. Thanks, Hector. Take care.
You too. Stay warm, my friends.
We'll try.
We'll try.